Canada's southern frontier. From the industrial border cities of Windsor and Detroit to pristine agricultural land lining the Lake Erie shoreline. An endangered species finding new life beneath Canada's busiest border crossing.
This reintroduction program has been a success so far.
One of Lake Erie's most famous stops on the Underground Railroad.
If you heard this bell, you knew someone else has arrived here in freedom.
And a marine legacy carries on in the community of Port Dover.
What made it really special is that we had the world's largest freshwater fishing fleet.
Now, we trace the secrets of the world's longest undefended border. More than 6,000 kilometers of rugged American frontier. Canada, over the edge. At the southernmost point of Lake Huron, we approach the border communities of Sarnia, Ontario, and Port Huron, Michigan. Sarnia is home to more than 70,000 residents, the largest city on Lake Huron. Sarnia was incorporated in 1856 during a period of rapid growth in the region. Within a few short years, oil was discovered and the railway was established, connecting Canada and the United States. During the Second World War, Sarnia was selected to produce petroleum-based rubber for use in the war. The effort was a success and laid the groundwork for the establishment of a major petrochemical hub, giving Sarnia the nickname Chemical Valley. On the American side of the river, Port Huron is home to 30,000 people and marks the easternmost point in the state of Michigan. Like Sarnia, it prospered as an industrial hub, specializing in lumber and shipbuilding. These historic communities are linked by the Blue Water Bridge. Its original span was built in 1938, then expanded in 1997 and 1999. Today, the bridge measures 1.8 kilometers, rising 45 meters above the water. With 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, it is one of the busiest commercial border crossings in Canada. Heading south, we follow the contours of the St. Clair River. The St. Clair River measures more than 65 kilometers, flowing at a rate of 5,200 cubic meters per second. The river not only divides Canada from the United States, but also marks the division between the upper and lower Great Lakes regions. It is also a busy shipping lane, with more than 75 million tons of cargo moving north and south each year. The banks of the river are an industrial hotbed with petroleum facilities, chemical manufacturers, and Sarnia's landmark grain elevator, the sixth largest of its kind in Canada. This region is a key economic sector for Ontario and Michigan. But all along this waterway, environmental concerns abound. Air and water quality is monitored on both sides of the river by government and vigilant local citizens in the nearby cities of Windsor and Detroit.
My name is Pat Noonan, and I'm standing on the shores of the Detroit River.
Windsorite Pat Noonan has been an activist in the Windsor-Detroit region for decades. She says one great example of international cooperation occurred when massive piles of petroleum coke, or pet coke, began appearing on Detroit's shoreline. Noonan, along with activists in Ontario and Michigan, believed the pet coke was a danger.
Windsor is still suffering from shock to discover the huge black piles on the Detroit side of our beautiful river. It was sprung on us. We didn't know what it was. We didn't like it. Then we started to investigate and found out this was the waste product of the oil coming from the oil sands.
Initially, officials said the pet coke, an Alberta oil sands byproduct, posed no harm to local citizens. But Noonan and others pressed on.
We can see it blowing at night. We have pictures. It's going into our water and into our air. So it was tested by the state, of course, telling us nothing to worry about. Of course, we had to go to another source of testing. The labs in Ann Arbor showed that dangerous chemicals are going into the air and into the water. So we are not happy campers.
After months of protest, the pet coke piles were finally removed. A cross-border environmental victory.
Wonderful response, and both these communities have taken place. We've come together around the issue. People show up, people are worried, children are involved, parents especially. Neighbors have the proof right on the front porches and even in their houses. So we've been causing a lot of trouble both sides of the river. That's the strength. When two countries can work together and say, this can't go on, they get nervous.
Pat Noonan says the civic response in Windsor and Detroit was nothing new. The region has seen decades of grassroots activism, from environmental issues to labor conditions in the auto industry.
I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, and when you live here, you get used to taking action. I believe that I can do something about problems. And so many of my friends and my community were not afraid to speak out, to demonstrate, to say we won't take this anymore. And that's not so unusual. That's what it is to be a Windsorite.
Next, we fly high above the cities of Windsor and Detroit and reveal an endangered species living life on the edge. Southwest of the international St. Clair River, the Detroit River is one of the busiest waterways on Earth. It is 44 kilometers long and holds a unique distinction. It is designated an American and Canadian Heritage River, the only river of its kind in the world. On the south side of the river, Windsor, Ontario is Canada's southernmost city. The region has been home to First Nations peoples for thousands of years, with the French arriving in 1749. Windsor developed steadily as an agriculture and railway town. It was devastated by fire in 1871, when more than 100 buildings burned to the ground. In the 20th century, Windsor became the heart of Canada's automobile industry. Today, it is home to more than 200,000 residents and is recognized as Canada's oldest continually inhabited European settlement west of Montreal. On the northern bank of the Detroit River, the city of Detroit is home to more than 700,000 people. Detroit was founded in 1701 by the French explorer Antoine de la Mothe Sieur de Cadillac and was originally part of the province of Quebec. The city changed hands in 1796, granted to the Americans with the signing of the Jay Treaty. Then, during the War of 1812, the British took control in a battle known as the Siege of Detroit. The Americans recaptured Detroit in 1813, and it was incorporated 2 years later. The city grew, and by the early 20th century, Detroit was known as the automotive capital of the world and the fourth largest city in America. Together, the Windsor and Detroit metropolitan areas are home to 5.7 million people. Monuments on both sides of the border recognize this unique geography, including the Nancy Brown Peace Carillon on Belle Isle and the Gateway to Freedom Memorial in Detroit's Hart Plaza, honoring the legacy of the Underground Railroad. And beneath the beams and cables of the Ambassador Bridge, the cities of Windsor and Detroit share something else. Peregrine falcons are protected in Canada, but can be legally hunted in the United States. Nonetheless, one falcon pair has chosen the bridge as an unlikely breeding ground to stage a comeback.
My name is Dennis Patrick, and my wife Gwen and I have been the site coordinators for the Canadian Peregrine Foundation here at the Ambassador Bridge for the last 7 years.
Dennis Patrick and his wife Gwen are charged with monitoring the Ambassador Bridge falcons and intervening if young birds become isolated from their nest.
Here comes one. One just came in. The peregrines fly very uniquely. They don't flap like other birds. They throw themselves into flight. So the first flight off of that ledge up there is a real heart stopper for these little peregrines. And we're very happy that they're able to utilize a man-made structure where normally they would live on cliffs and things of that nature. So this has worked out very well to accommodate both human needs and also the needs of the peregrine falcon.
As monitors, they also attach unique ID markers, offering these birds cross-border amnesty.
We also install very, very important bands on them. These bands ensure that when the youngsters migrate south through the states, they cannot be harvested. If they are caught, they must be released into the wild. So one of the reasons why we ban the birds and why it's so important is we can monitor how successful our reintroduction efforts are. And just by the fact that one of our youngsters from 2010 has already produced young, 3 young of its own, we know that this reintroduction program has been a success so far.
But for Dennis and Gwen Patrick, the Falcon Project has a deeper meaning. Following brain surgery and a coma in 2007, Gwen Patrick was forced to relearn everything. The falcons proved an invaluable resource.
When Gwen got out of 142 days hospital and rehabilitation, we started to look for ways to work on her binocular vision. And we found ourselves as lay people right in the middle of this reintroduction process of the peregrine falcons. We hooked up with the Canadian Peregrine Foundation. But what a wonderful way for my wife to be able to exercise her eyes. It gives you all the fields of vision, depth, fast focus, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful rehabilitation tool.
The Patricks built a 3-story platform on the back of their home, allowing Gwen unlimited opportunity to focus on the birds. The exercise of focusing and following the birds actually repaired her vision.
I call it a hawk tower, and Dennis had it built for me so I could come out with my binoculars and watch the birds fly over, mainly the hawks, because I'm really into hawks and peregrine falcons. And the first night I came out here, I saw 2 red tails fly over, and it was great.
The exercise has helped Gwen repair her field of vision, depth perception, and rapid eye focus.
And just to watch them, it's helped me with my depth of perception.
As Gwen's health continues to improve, the Patricks can return their focus to the health of the falcons themselves.
I think the future of the peregrine falcon in this reintroduction program, it's been very productive. We're definitely increasing the numbers of peregrines. We're very alarmed, though, that the government has been cutting back on the protection of species at risk. I think as long as we, as individuals, respect the environment and do everything we can not to use toxic chemicals, not to use bad pesticides, and to respect these birds and take care of them, I think the reintroduction will continue to be successful.
Heading east, we explored the legacy of the Underground Railroad. And we reached the southernmost point in Canada. Just south of the border cities of Windsor and Detroit, we trace the final kilometers of the Detroit River. Here, the waters begin to widen. To the west, the industrial state of Michigan leads to Ohio and the American Midwest. On the opposite bank, spectacular southern Ontario lines the Lake Erie shoreline. "50 kilometers east, we veer south on approach to Point Pelee National Park. The park is set on a small spit of land, just 7 kilometers long. It features marshlands, beaches, and hiking trails. The park is also known for wildlife, located at the crossroads of 2 major migration routes, with more than 40 species of songbirds. But Point Pelee National Park may be best known for its geography. Its latitude is aligned with the upper reaches of California and marks the southernmost point in Canada. Back to the Lake Erie coastline, we continue east over kilometers of open farmland. The region is home to some of Canada's richest agricultural grounds. More than 9,000 farms line the shores of Lake Erie, with a diverse array of crops, including tobacco, sweet corn, soybean, and tomatoes. It is an agricultural heritage that has attracted settlers for thousands of years. And just inland, the fields of North Buxton hold a special place in that agricultural legacy. This area was once known as the Elgin Settlement, established by anti-slavery activist Reverend William King. The Elgin Settlement was the last stop on the Underground Railroad for many African Americans seeking refuge in Canada. Today, it is a National Historic Site.
My name is Shannon Prince. I'm the curator of the Buxton National Historic Site Museum, which is located in North Buxton, Ontario. In 1849, Reverend William King, he was a white Presbyterian minister, and he founded this land. And this was all Crown land because we're under the British Crown, but it was also clergy reserve land set aside for the Anglican Church. And the church was not picking it up because it was heavily forested, swampy land, and they didn't really know what to do with it. But Reverend King knew that when he brought his former slaves here, that he and his slaves would be able to clear and maintain this property. So when anyone arrived, you would receive 50 acres, but you had 10 years to pay that off, and you were charged $2.50 an acre. And so Reverend King put rules and regulations in place to ensure that this land and this area would be predominantly Black-owned and operated.
The settlement thrived for generations. Shannon Prince is a direct descendant of those first settlers.
Well, I'm a sixth-generation descendant. Growing up here, it was just great, and because you had your local stores, the schools, the churches, and everyone basically took care of each other.
Prince is also the curator of the Buxton National Historic Site and Museum, preserving the stories of the Elgin settlement.
Not far from the farm where we are presently located is the museum where many of the original artifacts and diaries and wills and census records from this area are being housed. One of the first things that people see when they come is this beautiful bell. In 1850, when the people in Pittsburgh heard about the educational, spiritual, and economic opportunities that were given to Blacks, they made a beautiful 550-pound bronze bell, and they shipped it from Pittsburgh to Buxton. And the inscription on it reads, "Presented to the Reverend William King by the colored inhabitants of Pittsburgh for the Academy at Raleigh, Canada West." So when anyone arrived here in the settlement, they would ring this bell. So if you were out in the, in the field or in the house, but if you heard this bell, you knew that yes, someone else has arrived here in freedom. So when people come, I encourage them to ring the bell because to me, it's one of those last symbols of freedom that we do have. So I'm going to ring the bell. You've arrived in freedom. Welcome. Inside of our museum, we're very fortunate to have some wonderful artifacts dating back to slavery days. These are some of them, and this is a replica of a slave collar right here. But one of the most prominent ones that we do have, these are original adult ankle shackles. And these are very, very powerful, especially when you explain to people that, yes, this actually did come off a slave's ankle. But if you look, see, there's a little piece missing, but this is how big his ankle was. And it goes up through here like this, and this piece comes around like this. So this is how much room he would have had, which is not a whole lot. And some people, it's hard for them to pick up because it is that reality of slavery. It's an issue that a lot of people don't wish to discuss because even though they don't wish to discuss it, it is a part of our history. They are very, very powerful, but it also reminds us of how far we have come to eradicate slavery.
Not far from the museum's main building, an original home from the settlement demonstrates the way of life for settlers here.
This cabin was built in 1850, and it's one of the oldest homes in the settlement, and we relocated it here on site, on the museum site, several years ago to preserve it. Now, when you arrived, your homes had to be 18 by 12 by 24, and you had to have at least 4 rooms. You had to have a porch, a flower garden, vegetable garden, a picket fence, and 33 feet back from the road. So you can see some of these original beams. the beams and the floor joists, but you can also, which is really wonderful, to see the hand-hewn logs. And you can see the different people who helped build it by their hewn marks. And it's just amazing, you know, this part of history when people can come and touch it, that's still being preserved today.
Finally, the museum's schoolhouse is one of the gems of the collection. The settlement was known for offering some of the best education to blacks anywhere in Canada.
This 1861 school is one of our most treasured artifacts that we do have. And 90% of the wood on the outside is 1861. The frames of the doors and the windows, 1861. This 80% of this tin is from 1861. And I think this is a true testament that our ancestors have left for us.
The building is especially important to Shannon Prince. Generations of her family attended school here.
Let me give you an example of the quality of education that was being taught. We're very fortunate to have some original books, and this is a spelling book that dates back to 1879. These men, Republicans from servility, who published rhetorical panegyrics on massacres, and who reduced plunder to a system of ethics, are as ready to preach slavery as anarchy. That was grade 4 in 1879. And that was one of the reasons why people were coming to Canada for freedom, but coming to Buxton to educate their children. The future of North Buxton, that whole legacy heritage will be preserved, not only with our generation, but future generations. I guess we are very honored to have so many of our young people to return to the area, and they are inspirations for us and our parents. I tell people that I'm a sixth-generation descendant, but I feel very proud of the fact that I can add another chapter in a book that my ancestors started.
Further east, we explore the renewable energy powering Lake Erie and reveal the spectacular sands of Rondeau Provincial Park. Ontario's Lake Erie shoreline features some of the most pristine scenery the Great Lakes has to offer. 50 kilometers east of Point Pelee National Park, we reach another coastal landmark. This is Rondeau Provincial Park. It is Ontario's second oldest provincial park, founded in 1894. It features a unique landscape, including Canada's largest tract of old-growth Carolinian forest, supporting plant life not found in other parts of Canada. Rondeau Provincial Park is also known for its 8-kilometer-long sand spit, extending to the open waters of Lake Erie. And for its world-famous birdwatching opportunities, highlighted by a springtime attraction known as the Festival of Flight. Continuing east, we follow the contours of Lake Erie. Lake Erie is the 4th largest of the Great Lakes and the 11th largest lake in the world. Like the other Great Lakes, it is a crater left behind by moving glaciers and is just 4,000 years old. But Lake Erie is shallow, with an average depth of 19 meters, holding 483 cubic kilometers of water, just 4% the volume of Lake Superior. More than 12 million people live along its shores, a shoreline that stretches more than 1,400 kilometers. Just inland, dozens of wind turbines line the horizon. Ontario is at the forefront of renewable energy in Canada, with wind accounting for more than 1,700 megawatts of electricity. And not far away, solar panels cover acres of fields. It is all part of a bold plan by the province of Ontario to be a world leader in green energy. The province says it will stop burning coal altogether. And by 2021, they say 20,000 megawatts of renewable energy will be online. Back to the Lake Erie shoreline, Long Point Provincial Park lies in the distance. The park extends more than 20 kilometers offshore. It features hiking, camping, and fishing, as well as kilometers of beaches, drawing thousands of outdoor enthusiasts. Long Point Provincial Park also boasts a unique and protected ecosystem and has been designated a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Next, we explore the marine traditions of Port Dover, Ontario, and return to America at Fort Erie and Buffalo's historic Peace Bridge. Northeast of Long Point Provincial Park, we reach the community of Port Dover, Ontario. Port Dover is home to just over 6,000 people and was founded in 1794. The community was a staging ground for battle during the War of 1812 and later grew with the development of the railway. But throughout the ages, Port Dover's strongest connection has always been to water. It is a legacy that would shape the future for many young Port Doverites.
My name is Mike Fletcher, and although it's not easy for me to say, I am an underwater adventurer. We are in almost the most southerly part of Canada, very close to the US border, on a border that's separated by Lake Erie in what they call the Eastern Basin. Growing up in the winter especially, it was just another rural Ontario community. But what made it really special is that we had the world's largest freshwater fishing fleet. So in the entire world, there were more fish boats in this little tiny town of Port Dover than anywhere else in the world.
It would be that distinction that would determine a career offshore for Mike Fletcher.
When I think about what I've done in my life and who I really am a victim of my environment. I was a farm boy growing up on the shores of Lake Erie. Our farm bordered right on the lake. My ancestors were all fishermen or farmers. So it was just a natural thing that I find some sort of livelihood that was related to the land and the water. From the time I was a little guy, I was going to be a diver in a canvas suit and a big brass helmet and go out in the bottom of Lake Erie and drill gas wells. And so I followed that instinct and made that happen.
Fletcher began his career on the commercial dive sites of Lake Erie.
The workplace is quite a different environment in the mid-'70s, early '70s when I came into the workplace. And commercial diving was a very rough and tumble business. And I was on what I would call the very end of the cowboy era in the drilling of gas wells and diving here in Lake Erie. If you could do the job was yours, but you couldn't count on keeping your job unless you're willing to fight for it.
After years in commercial diving, Fletcher realized his passion was indeed underwater, but not in natural gas. Fletcher would go on to be renowned as a shipwreck hunter.
Whenever I would get a day off, I was chasing shipwrecks. And I just had a passion for shipwrecks and maritime history.
I'm good.
There was a time in history when Lake Erie was perhaps the busiest of all the water highways here on the Great Lakes. So when you find shipwrecks in Lake Erie, you find a real cross-section of the history, the commerce, the trade, and the culture of this entire area. Anything from ancient explorers' shipwrecks in the 16th century to modern lake freighters.
Fletcher continues to call Port Dover home. And while it is no longer home to the world's largest freshwater fishing fleet, Fletcher believes the future is bright.
Lake Erie has proven to be a very resilient lake. It's produced fish, huge volumes of fish for the last 150 years. So it's not just Lake Erie, it's this entire area. So whatever change is in the future, this county, Norfolk County, this town, Port Dover, will live through those changes and adapt to things and be a survivor. I'm convinced of that. This is a town that will always survive because it's full of survivors.
"75 kilometers beyond Port Dover, we reach the eastern extremity of Lake Erie. Here, the town of Fort Erie is connected to Buffalo, New York by the Peace Bridge, a kilometer-long span that was dedicated in 1927 by the U.S. Vice President, the Canadian Prime Minister, and the heir to the throne of England. Today, 4.7 million vehicles and $40 billion in trade moves back and forth between Canada and the United States. From the industrial waters of the St. Clair River, dividing Ontario and Michigan, to the border cities of Windsor and Detroit, to the spectacular sand dunes of Rondeau Provincial Park. Canada's southern frontier is a mix of the borderland's biggest cities and most secluded nature reserves. With a legacy of agricultural lands dedicated to freedom, and a subsea landscape still being explored. The waters of Lake Erie hold a profound history and a bold future, here on the edge of Canada.